The merciless Wyoming sun beat down on Katherine Jensen's parched lips as she stumbled alongside her family's covered wagon, her vision blurring with each desperate step. 3 days without food had hollowed her cheeks and weakened her once steady gait, but the promise of Lusk, a fresh start after losing everything in scent. Louis kept her moving forward until her body finally betrayed her. The world tilted sideways as Katherine collapsed into the dusty trail, her emerald eyes rolling back as consciousness slipped away. The last thing she registered was the thundering of approaching hoofbeats and the silhouette of a man against the blazing afternoon sky. Cole Jackson had been tracking a small herd of pronghorn when he spotted the wagon in the distance, moving at an odd, jerky pace along the trail to Lusk. Something about it struck him as wrong. As he drew closer, he watched in alarm as a young woman in a faded blue dress crumpled to the ground beside the wagon's wheel. He spurred his horse forward, reaching her in seconds, and dismounted in one fluid motion. The woman lay motionless in the dirt, her chestnut hair spilling from beneath a sun-bleached bonnet, her face ghostly pale beneath a spattering of freckles. Miss, can you hear me?" Cole gently turned her face toward him, noting the cracked lips and the hollowness beneath her cheekbones. Starvation, he recognized immediately. He'd seen it too often during the war. A feeble sound from the wagon drew his attention. An older woman, the girl's mother, he guessed was slumped against the wagon seat, barely conscious herself. 2 small children huddled behind her, their wide eyes reflecting fear and exhaustion. "Water," the older woman whispered. "Please." Cole reached for his canteen and carefully lifted it to her lips. "What happened? How long have you been without supplies?" 5 days since our food ran out," she managed between sips. 3 since the last of our water. My husband died 2 weeks back. Fever took him quick. We've been trying to make it to Lusk." Cole glanced at the unconscious young woman. "Your daughter needs help, madam." "Katherine," the woman whispered. "My daughter." Moving swiftly, Cole returned to Katherine's side. He dampened his bandana with precious water and pressed it to her forehead and lips. "Katherine, can you hear me, Katherine?" Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Cole made a quick decision, lifting her into his arms and carrying her to a small patch of shade beneath the wagon. He propped her head on his rolled-up jacket and turned back to the wagon. "I have a camp about 2 miles from here, near a creek. Got provisions there. I'll help get you there." As he helped the mother and children down from the wagon, Katherine stirred, her eyes opening to mere slits. "Water," she whispered. Cole knelt beside her immediately, supporting her head as he tipped the canteen to her parched lips. "Easy now," he cautioned. "Small sips." After a few moments, Katherine's eyes opened fully, revealing irises the color of spring grass. She tried to sit up but fell back weakly. "Food," she mumbled. "The children." "I'll help you all," Cole assured her, "but you're in no condition to move yet." He rummaged through his saddlebag and pulled out a small package wrapped in oilskin. Inside was the remainder of his jerky and hardtack enough for one modest meal. He broke off a piece of jerky and offered it to Katherine. She weakly pushed his hand toward the children. "Them first." "They haven't eaten in longer." Cole shook his head firmly. "You'll eat before I do. All of you will." His voice was gentle but brooked no argument. "I've gone hungry before and lived to tell the tale." Something in his steady blue eyes made Katherine relent. She accepted the small piece of jerky, chewing it slowly as Cole distributed the rest to her mother and siblings. "I'm Cole Jackson," he said as he worked. "I run cattle about 20 miles northeast of Lusk." "Katherine Jensen," she replied weakly. "This is my mother, Martha, and my brother and sister, Thomas and Sarah." Cole nodded to each in turn. "Let's get you to my camp. You can rest properly there, have a real meal. Then tomorrow we can figure out what's next." Katherine watched as this stranger, this cowboy with sun-weathered skin and kind eyes, took charge of their desperate situation with calm efficiency. He hitched his horse to their wagon after determining their own horse was too exhausted to pull any longer. Leading his own mount alongside, he guided them slowly toward his camp. "Why are you helping us?" Katherine asked as they traveled, her voice barely above a whisper. Cole glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "Out here, nobody survives alone. My pa taught me that." The camp Cole led them to was nestled beside a bubbling creek, shaded by cottonwood trees that rustled in the afternoon breeze. A small, neatly maintained campfire pit stood at its center, with a lean-to nearby that offered shelter from the elements. With practiced movements, Cole helped Martha and the children down from the wagon, then turned to Katherine. "Think you can stand?" She nodded determinedly, though her legs trembled as she attempted to rise. Cole's strong hands caught her elbows, steadying her as she stepped down from the wagon. For a moment, she leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his chest through the thin fabric of her dress. "Thank you," she murmured, embarrassed by her weakness. "Sit here in the shade," he directed, helping her to a spot beneath the largest cottonwood. "I'll get a fire going and some food started." Katherine watched as Cole moved about the camp with practiced efficiency, stoking a fire to life and setting a pot of beans to warm. From his saddlebags, he produced coffee, more jerky, and a small sack of cornmeal. In short order, he had a hearty meal prepared for them, simple trail food, but to the starving Jensen family, it was a feast fit for royalty. "Eat slowly," Cole cautioned as he passed around tin plates. "Your stomachs aren't used to food anymore. Small bites, chew well." Katherine observed him as they ate, noting how he took nothing for himself until they had all been served. Even then, his portion was noticeably smaller than theirs. His selflessness touched something deep within her, a place she thought had hardened after the trials of the past months. As twilight descended, Cole built the fire higher and helped Martha and the children settle into the lean-to for the night, providing them with his bedroll and blankets. "Where will you sleep?" Katherine asked when he returned to the fireside where she sat, gradually regaining her strength. "I'll be fine," he answered, settling across the fire from her. "Used to sleeping under the stars." In the flickering firelight, Katherine studied him properly for the first time. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps only a few years older than her 22 years. His face was weathered from life outdoors, but handsome in a rugged way, with a strong jaw and straight nose. His eyes, though they were what held her attention. Clear, blue, and direct, they carried a depth of experience that seemed at odds with his apparent age. "You saved our lives today, Mr. Jackson," she said softly. "Cole," he corrected. "And anyone would have done the same." Katherine shook her head. "No, not anyone." She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "We've encountered plenty of travelers these past weeks. Most rode past without a second glance." Cole poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling upward. "What brings you folks to Wyoming territory? It's not exactly welcoming to newcomers, especially women and children traveling alone." Katherine's expression darkened. "We had a farm outside St. Louis. After my father died last year, we managed well enough, but then the bank called in our loan, said they needed the land for the railroad." She picked at a loose thread on her shawl. "My mother's brother lives in Lusk, wrote that we could start over there." Cole nodded. "I know of similar stories. The railroads are changing everything." He hesitated. "Your husband, is he?" "I'm not married," Katherine replied, a hint of defensiveness in her tone. "It was just us and my stepfather, William. He married Mother 3 years ago, but as I said, he succumbed to fever 2 weeks into our journey." "I'm sorry for your loss," Cole said sincerely. Katherine's expression was complicated. William was, not always kind, but he didn't deserve to die that way. She looked away, into the darkness beyond their small circle of light. No one does. Cole sensed there was more to the story but didn't press. Instead, he offered her more coffee, which she accepted gratefully. The night was cooling rapidly, as desert nights tended to do, and the hot drink brought color back to her cheeks. "Tell me about your ranch," Katherine said, changing the subject. A small smile touched Cole's lips. "It's not much yet. 120 acres, a small cabin, and about 60 head of cattle. But the land is good water year-round from the creek, decent grazing." "You're building something," Katherine observed. "Something of your own." Cole nodded. "Been at it 3 years now. Before that, I drove cattle up from Texas, rode for the Pony Express for a spell, did whatever work came my way." "And your family," his expression shuddered slightly. "Lost them in '63, raid on our homestead in Kansas. The war, border ruffians. Didn't much matter which side they claimed to be on." His voice was flat. "I was 17, away delivering horses to Fort Leavenworth, came back to find everything gone." Katherine reached across the space between them, briefly touching his hand. "I'm sorry." Cole looked at their hands, then up at her face, illuminated by the dancing flames. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition, perhaps, of shared loss and resilience. He cleared his throat. "We should both get some rest. Tomorrow we'll head for Lusk." "It's about a day's journey from here." Katherine nodded, suddenly feeling the exhaustion of the day pressing down on her. "Thank you, Cole, for everything." "Get some sleep, Katherine," he said gently. "You're safe now." As she made her way to the lean-to, Katherine glanced back once to see Cole spreading his duster on the ground near the fire, using his saddle as a pillow. The simple act of giving up his own comfort for strangers spoke volumes about the man who had appeared like a guardian angel on the dusty trail to Lusk. For the first time in weeks, Katherine fell asleep without fear gnawing at her heart. Morning arrived with the cheerful chatter of meadowlarks and the aroma of coffee brewing over a freshly stoked fire. Katherine emerged from the lean-to to find Cole already up, tending to the horses and preparing a simple breakfast of cornmeal porridge sweetened with the last of his molasses. "You look better," he observed as he handed her a steaming cup of coffee. "Some color back in your cheeks." Katherine accepted the cup gratefully. "I feel human again," she admitted. "Amazing what food, water, and sleep can do." Thomas and Sarah soon joined them, their small faces brighter than they had been in days. Even Martha moved with more vigor, though exhaustion still lined her face. After breakfast, Cole helped them pack up the wagon. "The trail to Lusk follows the creek for a while," he explained, "then cuts north through the foothills. We should make it by nightfall if we keep a steady pace." As they traveled, Katherine found herself watching Cole, the confident way he handled the horses, his vigilant scans of the horizon, the gentle patience he showed her younger siblings. Thomas, especially, had taken to following Cole's every movement with wide-eyed admiration. "Have you ever shot a real Indian?" the 9-year-old boy asked as they stopped to water the horses at midday. "Thomas," Katherine admonished, "that's not an appropriate question." Cole crouched down to the boy's level. "The Lakota and Cheyenne people who live in these territories aren't so different from us, Thomas. They're just trying to protect their families and their way of life." "But in the Penny Dreadfuls," Thomas began. "Those stories get most everything wrong," Cole said firmly. "I've traded with the Lakota. They're good people if treated fairly, which doesn't happen often enough." Katherine felt a surge of respect for Cole's response. Most men she knew spoke of Native Americans with fear or hatred. Cole's measured words revealed a depth of character that continued to surprise her. As the day progressed and Lusk grew closer, Katherine found herself increasingly anxious about what awaited them. Would her uncle welcome 4 unexpected dependents? Would they find a place in this frontier town? And what of Cole Jackson? Would he simply deliver them to Lusk and disappear from their lives? The thought troubled her more than it should have, given they'd known each other barely a day. "Tell me about your uncle," Cole said, as if reading her thoughts. They were walking alongside the wagon to spare the horses, and the children had fallen asleep in the back. Katherine sighed. "Uncle Robert is my mother's older brother. He left Missouri 15 years ago, writes once or twice a year, but I've not seen him since I was a child." She hesitated. In his last letter, he mentioned he'd built a successful mercantile business in Lusk. Cole nodded thoughtfully. "Lusk is growing fast with the cattle trade. A mercantile would do well there." "He doesn't know we're coming," Katherine admitted, her voice low so her mother wouldn't overhear from her position on the wagon seat. "Our last letter telling him of our situation would barely have reached him. We had no choice but to leave when we did." Cole's expression remained neutral, but Katherine detected a flicker of concern. "Family is family," he said finally. "I'm sure he'll welcome you." Katherine wasn't as confident, but she kept her doubts to herself. Whatever awaited them in Lusk had to be better than starvation on the open trail. As the afternoon sun began its westward descent, the scattered buildings of Lusk appeared on the horizon. Even from a distance, Katherine could see it was a town in transition, new wooden structures rising alongside older, more provisional buildings. A steeple pierced the sky near the town center, and the railroad tracks gleamed to the south. "There it is," Cole announced. "Your new home." Katherine felt a curious mixture of relief and apprehension. "I suppose it is." Cole glanced at her. "You don't sound convinced." She shrugged slightly. "I'm grateful to have reached it. Beyond that, I'm reserving judgment." This drew a small smile from him. Wise approach. As they entered the town proper, the usual activities of a frontier settlement surrounded them: shopkeepers closing up for the day, cowboys emerging from saloons, women calling children in for supper. Many eyes turned to observe the new arrivals, particularly the handsome cowboy leading their wagon. "Jensen's Mercantile," Martha said suddenly, pointing ahead. "There it is." Katherine followed her mother's gesture to a substantial 2-story building with large display windows and a freshly painted sign. "Jensen's Dry Goods and General Merchandise." Cole guided the wagon to a stop in front of the store. A bell jingled as the door opened, and a portly man with thinning gray hair stepped out, squinting at them in the fading light. "Can I help you folks?" he called. Martha stood shakily. Robert, it's Martha, your sister." The man's mouth fell open in shock. "Martha? Good God, what are you doing here?" The reunion that followed was chaotic and emotional. Robert Jensen embraced his sister with genuine warmth, though his expression registered alarm at her frail condition. He was introduced to his niece and nephew, whom he hadn't seen since they were small children, and to little Sarah, whom he'd never met. Through it all, Cole remained quietly in the background, unloading their meager possessions from the wagon. "And who is this young man?" Robert finally asked, turning to Cole. Katherine stepped forward. "This is Cole Jackson. He saved our lives yesterday when we ran out of food and water on the trail. We wouldn't have made it to Lusk without him." Robert extended his hand. "Then I owe you a tremendous debt, Mr. Jackson. Thank you for bringing my family safely to me." Cole accepted the handshake. "Just happened to be in the right place at the right time, sir." "Nonsense," Martha interjected. "He gave us his own food and water, let us use his camp, and guided us here when he surely had his own business to attend to." Robert looked at Cole with newfound respect. "You must stay for supper at the very least. My wife Dorothea sets a fine table." Cole glanced at Katherine, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. "That's kind of you, but I should, please," Katherine said softly. "Stay." Something in her voice made it impossible for Cole to refuse. He nodded. "Thank you. I'd be honored." The upstairs of the Mercantile had been converted into a spacious living quarters where Robert and his wife Dorothea lived. Dorothea, a plump, cheerful woman about 10 years Robert's junior, welcomed the unexpected guests with remarkable composure, immediately setting about preparing additional food while Martha and the children were shown to the washroom to refresh themselves. Katherine, having helped settle her family, found herself momentarily alone with Cole in the parlor. "Your uncle seems like a good man," Cole observed. Katherine nodded. "Better than I dared hope. I feared we might be an unwelcome burden." "Family helping family is how it should be," Cole replied. He hesitated. "But if things don't work out here, my offer stands. There's work on my ranch if you need it." Katherine's heart quickened at his words. "That's very kind. But surely you don't need help from someone who fainted from hunger just yesterday." A smile touched Cole's lips. "You strike me as someone who doesn't stay down for long, Katherine Jensen." Before she could respond, Robert entered the room carrying a bottle and glasses. "Thought you might enjoy a drop of whiskey before dinner, Mr. Jackson." "Cole, please," he corrected, accepting the offered glass. Robert poured 3 measures and handed one to Katherine, who accepted it with slight surprise. "To new beginnings," Robert toasted, raising his glass. "And to the man who made them possible." They drank, Katherine wincing slightly at the burn of the liquor. Cole noticed and bit back a smile. "So, Cole," Robert continued, "Katherine tells me you have a ranch outside of town." "Yes, sir, about 20 miles northeast." "And you run it alone?" Cole nodded. "For now. Hope to hire a hand or two once I'm more established." Robert looked thoughtful. "Cattle business is booming in these parts. Railroads made all the difference." "It has," Cole agreed. "Though I'm focusing on breeding stock rather than beef cattle." "Better returns in the long run, I figure." "Smart man," Robert approved. "You should talk to Harrington at the bank. He's always looking for sound investments." The conversation continued, with Robert clearly taking Cole's measure. Katherine observed the exchange with interest, noting how easily Cole fielded her uncle's questions. There was a quiet competence about him that commanded respect without demanding it. Dinner was a hearty affair, with Dorothea producing a feast that seemed miraculous given the short notice: roasted chicken, potatoes, fresh bread, and apple pie for dessert. The Jensen children ate with enthusiasm, their recent brush with starvation making them appreciate every bite. As the meal progressed, Katherine learned more about her uncle's life in Lusk. The Mercantile had indeed prospered, making Robert one of the town's leading citizens. He and Dorothea had no children of their own but had established themselves as pillars of the community. "We have plenty of room for all of you," Dorothea assured Martha. "The second bedroom is large enough for Katherine and Sarah, and we can set up a cot in the study for Thomas." "That's very generous," Martha said, tears welling in her eyes. "We won't be a burden for long." "I can help in the store, and Katherine is skilled with a needle." "Nonsense," Robert said firmly. "Your family, you'll stay as long as needed." He glanced at Katherine. "Though I imagine a beautiful young woman like my niece won't remain unattached for long in a town with so many eligible bachelors." Katherine felt her cheeks warm. "I'm not looking for attachment, Uncle Robert. My priority is helping Mother and the children get established." Cole watched this exchange with an inscrutable expression. When dinner concluded, he rose to take his leave. "I should be going. Got a long ride back to my place." "Surely you'll stay the night," Robert protested. "It's dark already and the saloon has clean rooms." Cole shook his head. I appreciate the offer, but I need to get back. Got animals to tend to. Katherine walked with him to the door, suddenly reluctant to see him go. Outside on the porch, away from the others, she turned to face him. I don't know how to thank you properly, she said quietly. Cole adjusted his hat. No thanks needed. Will we see you again? The question slipped out before she could consider it. Something flickered in Cole's eyes. I come to town every couple of weeks for supplies. Katherine nodded, trying to hide her disappointment at such a non-committal answer. Well, if you ever need anything from the mercantile. Cole studied her face in the lamplight spilling from the window. You'll be all right here, Katherine. Your uncle's a good man. I know, she hesitated. But it was you who saved us. I won't forget that. On impulse, she rose on her tiptoes and pressed a quick kiss to his weathered cheek. Thank you, Cole Jackson. For a moment he seemed frozen in place, his expression unreadable. Then he touched the brim of his hat. Take care of yourself, Katherine Jensen. She watched from the porch as he mounted his horse and rode into the darkness, wondering why the sight of his departing figure left such a hollow feeling in her chest. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of adjustment for Katherine and her family. Robert proved as generous as his initial welcome suggested, insisting they consider his home their own. Martha, despite her continued weakness, began helping Dorothea with household tasks, while Thomas was enrolled in the local school. Katherine found herself working in the mercantile, where her quick mind and pleasant manner made her a natural at dealing with customers. She learned the inventory, helped with ordering, and even began keeping the books when Robert discovered her facility with numbers. Yet despite the relative comfort of their new situation, Katherine found her thoughts returning often to Cole Jackson. She found herself watching the door whenever the bell jingled, hoping to see his tall figure enter the store. Each day that passed without his appearance left her increasingly confused by her own reactions. You've been distracted all morning, Robert observed one day as they worked together unpacking a shipment of fabric. Something troubling you, Katherine? She shook her head. Just thinking. About a certain cowboy, perhaps? Her uncle's eyes twinkled. Katherine felt heat rising to her cheeks. I'm merely wondering if he's well. It seems strange that he hasn't come for supplies yet. Robert chuckled. Ranch work doesn't always allow for regular schedules. Besides, Cole Jackson has a reputation for self-sufficiency. This caught Katherine's attention. You know of him then. Lusk isn't so large that a man can remain anonymous, especially not one who saved the lives of the mercantile owner's family. Robert folded a bolt of calico. Cole's well-respected, though keeps to himself mostly. Fought for the Union in the latter years of the war, despite being hardly more than a boy. Worked hard, saved his money and bought that land fair and square when others might have just squatted. Pays his debts on time. You've made inquiries, Katherine realized. Robert shrugged. It's my duty to know about a man who might have intentions toward my niece. He has no such intentions, Katherine protested. He was simply being kind to travelers in distress. If you say so. Robert's tone made it clear he thought otherwise. In any case, you'll likely see him Saturday. There's a social at the church, a barn raising for the widow Collins. Most everyone in the county attends these things. Katherine tried to appear only mildly interested, though her heart had begun beating faster. Will he? He doesn't strike me as the social type. Maybe not, but he never misses a chance to help a neighbor in need. Robert gave her a knowing look. Perhaps you should wear that blue dress Dorothea altered for you. Brings out your eyes. Uncle Robert, Katherine exclaimed, but she couldn't help smiling. Saturday dawned clear and mild, perfect weather for a barn raising. Katherine found herself taking unusual care with her appearance, pinning her chestnut hair in a more flattering style than her usual practical bun. And yes, she wore the blue dress, though she told herself it was simply because it was her newest garment, not because of what her uncle had said about her eyes. The social was held at a small homestead on the outskirts of town, where a widow named Eliza Collins was struggling to maintain the property after her husband's death from pneumonia the previous winter. The men of the community had gathered to raise a new barn, while the women brought food for the shared meal that would follow. Katherine rode in the wagon with her uncle, aunt, mother, and siblings, her eyes scanning the gathered crowd as they approached. She told herself she was simply curious about the community, but in truth, she was looking for one particular figure. The barn raising was already underway when they arrived, with men swarming over the rising framework like ants. Katherine helped set up the food tables, all the while stealing glances at the workers. It was Thomas who spotted him first. "There's Mr. Jackson," the boy exclaimed, pointing toward the far side of the barn skeleton. "Can I go say hello?" Before Katherine could answer, Thomas had darted off toward the construction site. "That boy has taken quite a shine to your cowboy," Martha observed, coming to stand beside Katherine. "He's not my cowboy, Mother," Katherine protested. Martha gave her a knowing look. "He could be if you wished it." Katherine was spared having to respond by Thomas's return, dragging a reluctant Cole behind him. "Look who I found," the boy announced triumphantly. Cole stood before them, hat in hand, looking somewhat uncomfortable at being pulled away from his work. His flannel shirt was damp with sweat, and a smudge of dirt marked his tan cheek, but to Katherine, he'd never looked more handsome. "Mrs. Jensen, Miss Jensen," he greeted them with a polite nod. "Good to see you all looking so well." "Thanks to you," Martha replied warmly. "We've been hoping you'd visit the mercantile." "Been meaning to," Cole said, his eyes briefly meeting Katherine's before darting away. "Just been busy with the spring calving." "Of course," Martha nodded understandingly. "Well, we won't keep you from your work. Though I hope you'll join us for the meal later." "Yes, madam, I'd be pleased to." As Cole turned to go, Katherine impulsively stepped forward. "Perhaps you could show me around the property later. I've been curious about the different homesteads in the area." Something flickered in Cole's eyes, surprise, certainly, but perhaps pleasure as well. "I'd be happy to, Miss Jensen." "Katherine, please," she corrected gently. "After all we've been through, formality seems unnecessary." A small smile touched his lips. "Katherine, then." Thomas tugged at Cole's sleeve. "Can I come too?" Katherine opened her mouth to object, but Cole beat her to it. "Actually, partner, I was hoping you might help me with something important first. That crossbeam won't raise itself, and I need a good man to help guide it." Thomas's face lit up with importance. "Really? If your ma and sister approve," Cole added, glancing at Martha and Katherine. "Be careful," Martha cautioned, but nodded her permission. As Cole led Thomas back toward the barn, he glanced over his shoulder at Katherine. "I'll find you when we break for the meal." She nodded, trying to suppress the smile that threatened to overtake her face. The barn rose steadily throughout the morning, the organized chaos of the work fascinating to watch. Katherine found herself admiring the way the men coordinated their efforts, calling instructions and warnings to each other as the structure took shape. Cole, she noticed, worked with the quiet competence she'd come to associate with him, often taking on the most difficult or dangerous tasks without fanfare. By midday, the framework was complete, and the men began breaking for the meal served by the women. Katherine, helping to distribute plates of food, kept a lookout for Cole. She spotted him washing up at the water barrel, Thomas still at his side like a faithful shadow. When Cole finally approached the food tables, his hair was damp from washing, and he'd changed into a clean shirt that stretched across his broad shoulders. Katherine found herself momentarily speechless when he stopped in front of her. "Promised I'd find you," he said quietly. She recovered herself and handed him a plate. "Hungry? You've been working hard." "Starving," he admitted with a smile that transformed his usually serious face. Katherine filled his plate generously. "Thomas seems thoroughly attached to you." Cole glanced to where the boy was proudly recounting his barn-raising adventures to his mother. "He's a good kid. Reminds me of my younger brother at that age." This was the first time Cole had mentioned a brother, and Katherine's curiosity was piqued. "You had siblings?" A shadow crossed his face. "Two brothers, both gone now." Understanding he didn't wish to elaborate, Katherine changed the subject. "Are you still willing to show me around after you eat? I'd like that." They found a quiet spot beneath a cottonwood tree to eat their meal, joined briefly by Thomas, until Dorothea called him away to help serve pie. Left alone, Katherine found herself both nervous and comfortable in Cole's presence, a contradictory feeling she couldn't quite understand. "Your uncle's been good to you and your family," Cole observed between bites of chicken. Katherine nodded. "Better than we had any right to expect. He's even talking about adding a sewing and notions department to the store for me to manage." "You sew?" "Since I was a girl. I used to make all our clothes back home." She smiled. "I even made this dress, though Dorothea helped alter it to the current fashion." Cole's eyes briefly took in the blue fabric that indeed enhanced the green of her eyes. It suits you well." His awkward compliment warmed her more than an elaborate one might have. "Thank you." When they finished eating, Cole offered his arm. "Shall we walk?" The simple gesture felt significant as Katherine placed her hand in the crook of his elbow. They strolled away from the busy social, toward the creek that ran along the edge of the Collins property. "Is Mrs. Collins's situation common?" Katherine asked as they walked. "Women left to manage alone after losing their husbands," Cole nodded grimly. "More common than it should be. Frontier life is hard on everyone, but especially hard on women alone. Yet they persevere. The strong ones do." He glanced at her. "Like you." Katherine shook her head. "I wasn't strong. I fainted, remember? After days without food, still walking to protect your family." Cole's voice was firm. "That's strength, Katherine." They reached the creek and paused to watch the water flow over the smooth stones. In the distance, the raised barn stood as testament to community spirit, while the sounds of laughter and conversation drifted toward them on the breeze. "I've thought about you," Cole said suddenly, his gaze fixed on the water. "Wondered how you were settling in." Katherine's heart skipped. "I've thought of you too." He turned to face her fully then, his blue eyes searching her face. "I'm not a man of many words, Katherine, never have been. But I'd like to call on you properly if you'd allow it." The directness of his statement took her breath away. "You want to court me?" "Yes." A faint flush colored his tan cheeks. "Though I understand if you'd rather not. I'm just a rancher with modest prospects, and you—" "Yes," Katherine interrupted. "I'd like that very much." The smile that spread across Cole's face was like sunshine breaking through clouds. For a moment, Katherine thought he might kiss her, but instead he reached for her hand, enfolding it in his larger one. "Your uncle might have something to say about it," he cautioned. Katherine smiled. "I think Uncle Robert already suspects. He's been dropping hints about you for days." "Has he?" Cole looked surprised, then thoughtful. "Guess I'll need to speak with him." "Such propriety," Katherine teased gently. "Is that necessary in the West?" "Some traditions are worth keeping," Cole replied seriously. "Especially when they involve a woman I respect." His sincerity touched her deeply. This man, who had saved her life with no thought of reward, now stood before her with honest intentions, and an integrity that seemed increasingly rare in the world she knew. Their conversation continued as they walked the perimeter of the property. Cole pointing out features of the land and explaining aspects of homestead life Katherine was unfamiliar with. The easy flow of their words felt natural, as if they'd known each other far longer than the brief time they'd actually spent together. When they finally returned to the gathering, Katherine noticed her uncle watching them with undisguised interest. Cole noticed too and squared his shoulders. "Think I'd better have that talk with him now," he murmured. Katherine squeezed his arm encouragingly. "He'll say yes." "How can you be so sure?" she smiled. "Because he knows, as I do, that you're a good man, Cole Jackson." Cole approached Robert with characteristic directness, requesting a private word. Katherine watched from a distance as the two men spoke, her uncle's initial seriousness giving way to a nod, and then to her relief, a hearty handshake and clap on the shoulder. When Cole returned to her side, his expression was one of cautious happiness. "He's given his blessing, though he says I'm to understand you're valuable to the mercantile, and he won't have you neglecting your duties." Katherine laughed. "That sounds like Uncle Robert, always the businessman. He also invited me to Sunday dinner tomorrow." Cole looked slightly daunted by this prospect. "Then I'll see you tomorrow," Katherine said, unable to keep the pleasure from her voice. As the social began to wind down and families prepared to depart, Cole helped the Jensens load their wagon. When it came time to say goodbye, he took Katherine's hand briefly in his. "Until tomorrow," he said softly. "Until tomorrow," she echoed, reluctant to let go. The following weeks established a pattern that quickly became the highlight of Katherine's life. Cole would ride into town every few days, ostensibly for supplies but primarily to see her. They would walk together in the evenings, sometimes accompanied by Thomas, often alone. Sunday dinners at the Jensen home became a regular occurrence, with Cole's place at the table accepted as naturally as if he'd always been there. Through their conversations, Katherine learned more about the man who had saved her family. Cole had indeed fought in the Civil War, lying about his age to enlist after losing his family. The horrors he'd witnessed had left scars both visible and hidden, but he spoke of them rarely and without self-pity. After the war, he drifted west, working various jobs until he saved enough to stake his claim on his ranch. "It's not much yet," he told her as they sat on the mercantile's back porch one evening in June, "but I'm adding to it every year. Got plans for a bigger house eventually." "I'd like to see it someday," Katherine said. "Your ranch," Cole looked at her with sudden intensity. "Would you? It's not fancy like your uncle's place." "I didn't grow up in fancy places, Cole. I grew up on a farm, remember?" He nodded slowly. "Sunday. If your uncle approves, I could take you out there Sunday after church." The prospect both thrilled and nervous her. "I'd like that." Sunday arrived with clear skies and pleasant temperatures. After church services, Cole helped Katherine into his wagon for the journey to his ranch. Robert had given his permission, though with the stipulation that they return before dark, and that Thomas accompany them, a chaperone of sorts, though the boy was more interested in seeing Cole's cattle than in monitoring his sister's behavior. The 20-mile journey took them through rolling prairie, dotted with wildflowers, and across a landscape that grew increasingly familiar to Katherine from Cole's descriptions. When they crested a final rise and Cole announced, "There it is," Katherine felt as if she were seeing a place she already knew. The ranch was modest but well-maintained. A small cabin built of sturdy logs stood near a clear running creek with a barn and corral nearby. Cattle grazed on the surrounding grassland, their reddish coats distinctive against the green. "Herefords," Cole explained as he helped Katherine down from the wagon. "Better suited to the climate than longhorns." Thomas immediately ran toward the corral, where several horses watched their arrival with pricked ears. "It's beautiful," Katherine said sincerely, taking in the sweeping vista of prairie meeting distant mountains. Cole watched her face carefully. It's isolated. Nearest neighbor is 5 miles away. Peaceful, she countered. No street noise, no customers demanding attention. A smile touched his lips. Come see the cabin. The interior of Cole's home was simple but surprisingly comfortable. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, with a well-made table and chairs before it. Shelves held books more than Katherine had expected, and a few carefully preserved photographs. A curtained alcove presumably contained his bed. You built this yourself? Katherine asked, running her hand along the smooth, plain table. Cole nodded. Every piece. My pa was a carpenter before he took up farming, taught me the basics. Katherine picked up one of the photographs, a family portrait showing a stern-looking man, a gentle-faced woman, and 3 boys of varying ages. Your family? Yes, Cole's voice was soft. That was taken a year before we lost them. Katherine studied the image, noting the serious expression on the face of the oldest boy, clearly Cole himself, perhaps 16 at the time. You look like your father. Act like him too, or so my mother always said. He took the photograph gently from her hands and replaced it on the shelf. Stubborn, determined, not always easy. Good qualities in a rancher, Katherine observed. Not always in a husband, Cole replied, then looked away as if he'd said too much. The word hung in the air between them. Husband. They'd been courting for nearly a month now, but neither had spoken of longer-term intentions. Katherine gathered her courage. I think those qualities would serve a husband well, especially one facing the challenges of frontier life. Cole's eyes returned to her face, searching. Katherine, he was interrupted by Thomas bursting through the door. Cole, there's a new calf in the barn. Can I see it? The moment broken, Cole nodded. Sure, partner, let's all go take a look. The afternoon passed pleasantly as Cole showed them around his property. Katherine watched him in his element, confident and knowledgeable, patient with Thomas's endless questions, clearly proud of what he'd built through his own efforts. As the sun began its westward descent, they reluctantly prepared to return to town. While Thomas went to fetch water for the horses, Cole and Katherine found themselves briefly alone near the wagon. Thank you for bringing me here, she said. I understand you better now. Do you? Katherine nodded. This place is part of you. I can see why you love it. Cole stepped closer, his expression intent. There's something else I love, Katherine. Her heart began to race. Is there? I think you know there is. He took her hand in his. I'm not a wealthy man, can't offer you the comforts your uncle can provide. But everything I have, everything I am, it would be yours if you wanted it. Cole, let me finish, he said gently. I love you, Katherine Jensen. Have since I watched you push away food when you were starving yourself, insisting your siblings eat first. I want to marry you, build a life with you here. It won't always be easy, but I promise you'll never go hungry again, and I'll spend every day trying to make you happy. Tears welled in Katherine's eyes. I love you too, she whispered. And I don't need wealth or comforts, I just need you. Cole's face transformed with joy. Slowly, reverently, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers, their first kiss, sweet and gentle and full of promise. They were still standing close, foreheads touching, when Thomas returned. The boy took one look at them and rolled his eyes. Are you two getting married now? Cole laughed, the sound vibrant and free. If your sister will have me, yes. Does that mean Katherine will live here with you? Thomas asked, his expression troubled. It does, Cole confirmed, but you can visit whenever you want. And maybe someday, when you're older, you could work here too. This seemed to satisfy the boy, who nodded solemnly before climbing into the wagon. The journey back to Lusk was filled with plans and dreams. Katherine knew there would be discussions with her uncle and mother, preparations to be made, concerns to address. But the future that had seemed so uncertain when she'd fainted beside the wagon now stretched before her, bright with possibility. Robert's reaction to their news was one of pleased satisfaction rather than surprise. "About time you made your intentions official," he told Cole. "Though we'll miss Katherine terribly at the mercantile." Martha wept happy tears, embracing both of them. "William would have sold Katherine to the highest bidder," she whispered to Cole. "Thank you for loving her instead." The wedding took place in late July, a simple ceremony in Lusk's small church followed by a celebration at Robert's home. Katherine wore a gown of ivory silk that she and Dorothea had worked on together, carrying wildflowers Cole had picked that morning from the prairie. As they exchanged vows before the community that had welcomed them, Katherine thought back to that desperate day on the trail when she'd collapsed from hunger and exhaustion. "You'll eat before I do," Cole had said then, establishing from their very first meeting the selfless nature of his love. Now, as he slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, his blue eyes shining with promise, she knew that same generosity of spirit would define their marriage, each putting the other's needs first, supporting each other through whatever challenges lay ahead. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher declared. "You may kiss your bride." Cole's kiss was gentle but full of emotion, sealing their commitment before family and friends. The celebration continued well into the evening, with music and dancing and more food than the entire Jensen family had seen in months of hard traveling. When it came time for the newlyweds to depart for Cole's ranch, their ranch, now Katherine found herself both nervous and eager for this new chapter. Her mother embraced her tightly. "Be happy, my darling girl." "I will be, Mother," Katherine promised, "and you'll visit soon." "Once you're settled," Martha agreed. "Though I suspect you two will want some time alone first." Katherine blushed at her mother's knowing smile. Cole helped her into the wagon, which had been decorated with ribbons and flowers by the townswomen. As they drove away from Lusk, waving to the well-wishers, Katherine leaned against her husband's shoulder. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. "Completely," she assured him. "Though I must admit I'm a bit nervous." Cole's arm tightened around her. "About tonight," she nodded, her cheeks warming. "We have all the time in the world, Katherine," he said gently. "Nothing needs to happen until you're ready." His consideration only made her love him more. "I'm ready to be your wife in every way," she told him, "just patient with my inexperience." The look he gave her was filled with such tenderness that it brought tears to her eyes. "We'll learn together," he promised. Their arrival at the ranch at home was different this time. Cole carried her across the threshold of the cabin, setting her down gently in what was now their shared space. He'd made preparations for her arrival. She noticed fresh curtains hung at the windows, wildflowers brightened the table, and the bed alcove had been rearranged to accommodate them both. "I want you to feel at home here," Cole said, watching her reaction anxiously. Katherine turned to him, her heart full. "I already do." Their first night together as husband and wife was a tender discovery, Cole's patience and gentleness guiding them through initial awkwardness to a deeper connection than Katherine had imagined possible. In the quiet aftermath, lying in his arms as moonlight spilled through the cabin window, she felt a sense of rightness, of belonging. "I never thought I could be this happy," she whispered against his chest. Cole's fingers traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "When I found you on that trail, I was just trying to help a family in trouble. Never imagined I was finding my future wife." "God works in mysterious ways," Katherine murmured sleepily. "That he does," Cole agreed, pressing a kiss to her hair. "That he does." The seasons changed, and with them, the rhythm of life on the Jackson ranch evolved to include Katherine's presence. She learned the routines of ranch work, helping with the cattle when needed, establishing a productive vegetable garden, turning the cabin into a true home. Cole hired a ranch hand, a steady older man named Hank who lived in the bunkhouse and respected the newlyweds' privacy. By Christmas, Katherine had news to share with Cole. As they sat before the fireplace on Christmas Eve, exchanging simple gifts, she placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "I have one more gift for you," she said softly. "One that won't arrive until summer." Cole's expression transformed from confusion to wonder as understanding dawned. "A baby. We're having a baby," Katherine nodded, tears of joy in her eyes. "In July, the doctor thinks." Cole gathered her in his arms, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "I love you," he whispered fiercely. "Both of you." As winter gave way to spring and spring to early summer, Katherine's body changed to accommodate their growing child. Cole was attentive to a fault, insisting she rest frequently and hiring a local girl to help with household tasks as Katherine's pregnancy progressed. Martha, Robert, and Dorothea visited often, bringing gifts for the baby and news from town. Thomas and Sarah, growing tall under Robert's watchful care, loved coming to the ranch for extended stays. One evening in late June, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Cole took Katherine's hand. "I've been thinking about names," he said. Katherine smiled, running her free hand over her rounded belly. "Have you?" Cole nodded. "If it's a boy, I'd like to name him after my father, James." "James Jackson," Katherine tried the name out. "It has a strong sound to it." "And if it's a girl," Cole continued, "maybe after your grandmother. You've spoken of her so fondly." "Elizabeth," Katherine supplied, touched that he'd remembered her stories. "Elizabeth Jackson. I love both names." Cole's hand joined hers on her belly, where their child kicked vigorously as if approving the selections. "Not much longer now," he observed. "A few more weeks if the doctor's right." Katherine leaned against his shoulder. "Are you nervous?" "Terrified," Cole admitted with a small laugh. "But happy. So happy, Katherine." James Cole Jackson entered the world on a hot July afternoon, arriving with a powerful set of lungs and his father's blue eyes. Katherine, exhausted but radiant after a difficult labor, cradled her son while Cole looked on in awe. "He's perfect," Cole whispered, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "He is," Katherine agreed. "And hungry, I think." As she nursed their son for the first time, Katherine reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From the brink of starvation on the trail to Lusk, to this cabin filled with love and new life, it seemed miraculous. Cole sat beside them on the bed, his arm protectively around Katherine's shoulders. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For what?" "For our son. For making this house a home. For fainting beside that wagon and changing my life forever." Katherine laughed softly. "That's an odd thing to be thankful for." Cole pressed a kiss to her temple. "Not from where I'm sitting. That moment brought you to me, and I'll be grateful for it until my dying day." As baby James drifted to sleep at her breast, Katherine turned her face up to her husband's. "I love you, Cole Jackson. And I love you, Katherine Jackson, more than I have words to say." Outside the cabin window, the Wyoming sun began its descent, casting golden light across the land they both now called home. The future stretched before them, full of promise and possibility, a future that had seemed impossible in those desperate days on the trail, but had been born the moment a starving young woman had collapsed, and a cowboy with a generous heart had declared, "You'll eat before I do." 5 years later, the Jackson Ranch had prospered beyond Cole's most optimistic projections. The original cabin had been expanded into a comfortable home, with a proper bedroom for James and his 2-year-old sister Elizabeth. The herd had grown, and Cole had added sheep to their operations, having discovered the wool trade was increasingly profitable. Katherine, now skilled in all aspects of ranch management, had also established a small side business selling her needlework to shops in Lusk and even as far away as Cheyenne. Her designs, incorporating wildflowers and prairie scenes, had developed quite a following. On a warm September evening, as the children played in the yard under Hank's watchful eye, Cole and Katherine sat on their expanded porch, his arm around her shoulders as they enjoyed a rare moment of quiet. "I got a letter from Mother today," Katherine said. "Thomas has been accepted for apprenticeship with that surveyor in Cheyenne." Cole nodded approvingly. "He's got a good head for mathematics. It'll suit him well. She also says Sarah is the top of her class and talking about becoming a teacher." Katherine smiled. "Hard to believe they are the same hungry, frightened children from the Wagon. Your uncle and aunt have done well by them," Cole observed. "As have you," Katherine reminded him. "Thomas still talks about how you taught him to ride and shoot." Cole's expression grew thoughtful. "Been thinking about something, Katherine." "Oh, the Dutton property adjoining ours old man Dutton's looking to sell. Been thinking we might buy it." Katherine turned to face him. "That's nearly 200 acres, Cole." "It is," he agreed. "Good water rights, decent grazing land. With James growing up and little Beth after him, might be good to think about the future." "Can we afford it?" Cole smiled. "Thanks to your careful bookkeeping and my stubborn determination, as you call it, yes, we can." Katherine considered this. The expansion would mean more work, certainly, but also greater security for their children's future. "Then I think we should," she decided, "though we'll need more help around the place. Already spoke to Hank about it. He has a nephew looking for ranch work, good kid by all accounts." Katherine shook her head in amazement. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "Trying to," Cole admitted. "Want to build something that lasts, something our children and their children can be proud of." The setting sun bathed them in golden light as Katherine leaned into her husband's embrace. "When I think of how close we came to never meeting if you hadn't been hunting that day, if you'd taken a different trail." "Providence," Cole said simply. "Some things are just meant to be." From the yard came the sound of James's laughter as he chased a butterfly, with little Elizabeth toddling behind him. Hank sat whittling on a nearby stump, keeping a protective eye on both children. "You ever regret it?" Katherine asked suddenly. "Taking on a half-starved woman and her family?" "Your life might have been easier without us." Cole turned to her, his expression serious. "Easier, maybe, but empty." He cupped her face with his calloused hand. "You and those children are everything to me, Katherine, everything." The sincerity in his voice brought tears to her eyes. "And you to us." Their kiss was interrupted by James running up to the porch, excitement on his face. "Pa, Ma, look what I found." In his small hands was a tiny rabbit kit, its nose twitching nervously. "Careful now, son," Cole instructed, kneeling to the boy's level. "Wild things need gentle handling." "Can I keep him?" James asked hopefully. Cole and Katherine exchanged a glance. "No, sweetheart," Katherine explained. "He belongs with his mother and family. They'll be worried about him." Though disappointed, James nodded solemnly. At 5, he already showed signs of his father's sense of responsibility. "Where should I put him back?" "I'll help you find where he came from," Cole offered, taking his son's hand. "Beth can come too." Katherine watched as her husband led their children across the yard, little Elizabeth riding on his shoulders while James carefully cradled the rabbit. The sight filled her heart with contentment and gratitude. That night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Katherine and Cole lay together in the bedroom they'd built during her first pregnancy. Through the window, stars sparkled in the vast Wyoming sky, the same stars that had witnessed their first meeting on that desperate day. "I've been thinking about what you asked earlier," Cole said softly, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her arm. About regrets." He propped himself up on one elbow to look into her face. "I've never told you this, but that day I found you, I almost took a different route. Had been planning to head straight back to the ranch." Catherine's eyes widened. "What made you change your mind?" Cole shook his head slightly. "Something. A feeling, I guess. Like I needed to go that way instead. Never had a feeling like that before or since." "Divine intervention," Katherine suggested. "Maybe so." Cole smiled. "All I know is, finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me, Katherine Jackson." She reached up to touch his face, tracing the lines that years of sun and laughter had etched around his eyes. "And for me, being found by you was the beginning of everything good in my life." Their kiss deepened into something more, their bodies remembering and celebrating the love that had begun with an act of selfless kindness and grown into the foundation of their shared life. Outside, a gentle rain began to fall, nourishing the land that sustained them. Inside the home they'd built together, Cole and Katherine Jackson held each other close, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them as they had faced everything since that first day together, putting each other first, finding strength in their unshakable bond. From starvation to abundance, from strangers to soulmates, their journey had been remarkable in its simplicity. Love, freely given, returning 100-fold. And in the years to come, as their children grew and their ranch prospered, they would often look back on that pivotal moment when fate had brought them together on the trail to Lusk, the moment when a starving woman had fainted beside a wagon and a compassionate cowboy had declared, "You'll eat before I do."